It's no fault of Elvis, he loved the song.
Dolly Parton has finally dropped a bombshell. She's naming the 6 singers she can't stand the most. She's the country queen everyone loves, famous for that sparkling smile, big heart, and charm that could light up any room. But behind all that glitter and grace, there's a woman who's fought her way through one of the toughest industries for more than 60 years, and not everyone she met along the way made her life easy. For decades, Dolly's been known for keeping things classy, never spilling tea about who rubbed her the wrong way. But that sweet image? It's only part of the story. Now she's finally opening up about 6 music industry relationships that seriously tested her patience. From partners who turned into rivals to her very own goddaughter, whose wild life choices made her worry, Dolly's letting people see a side she rarely shows. The one that proves even the woman who wrote "I Will Always Love You" doesn't always find harmony in her world. These revelations show that even the queen of country's sunshine can cloud up when fame and ego mix. Her honesty might just change how the world sees country's most cherished legend. 6. Winona Judd. When 2 powerhouses collide. On paper, Dolly Parton and Winona Judd sound like the perfect duo. 2 fierce voices rising from Appalachian roots, breaking through the country scene with pure power and soul. Both women built their careers on authenticity, defying an industry that wanted female stars to play nice and stay quiet. But when 2 unstoppable forces meet, sparks are bound to fly. Despite their similar beginnings, insiders say the 2 never got close. Instead, there was what many describe as a respectful distance. It's not that they didn't respect each other, they just had totally different energies that didn't quite mix. Dolly even admitted it once in a rare 2019 interview with Nashville Life, saying, "I've always admired Winona's talent. That voice is a force of nature, but we're just different types. I've always believed in lighting up a room when I enter it, and Winona carries a different energy, not better or worse, just different." That might sound diplomatic, but behind the scenes, there was a little more heat than Dolly let on. People who were around back in the 90s, when both women were dominating award shows, say the vibe between them was cool, almost icy at times. There weren't any screaming matches or public fights, but when these 2 legends shared a backstage hallway, you could feel the tension. It wasn't war, but it sure wasn't warmth either. Some singers drain a room. "I like to light it up," Dolly reportedly told her band after one tense award show rehearsal, her voice full of playful frustration. The line, never meant for the public, perfectly captured the deep divide between her and Winona Judd, not just in music, but in how they handled people, pressure, and the spotlight itself. Former CMA producer Thomas Westfield remembered those days clearly. He said Dolly would show up like a burst of sunshine, cracking jokes, greeting every sound tech and stagehand by name, and spreading laughter like glitter. Winona, on the other hand, kept to herself, quiet and focused, often misunderstood as cold when she was really just battling her own inner storm. It wasn't hostility. It was 2 very different ways of surviving fame. The contrast didn't stop at personality. It bled right into their art. Dolly was all rhinestones, sparkle, and that unmistakable twang that could lift your spirits in seconds. Winona leaned into a moodier, more soulful sound. Her bluesy belts carried pain and power that hit deep. Dolly's voice shimmered like sunlight, while Winona's echoed like thunder through a dark sky. 2 queens, same kingdom, completely different reigns. But things got even more complicated when Winona faced tough times. Her mom, Naomi's retirement, and her rocky relationship with her sister Ashley left her world in chaos. And surprisingly, Dolly, who was always known as everyone's industry mama, didn't rush in this time. She kept her distance, knowing maybe her usual dose of sunshine wasn't what Winona needed right then. Even Dolly knew her positivity could sometimes be too much for someone walking through shadows. "I didn't understand Winona's darkness for a long time," Dolly later admitted in a 2021 reflection about her career relationships. "I've had my struggles too, but I always believed in pushing through with a smile. Some people need to process differently. It took me years to respect that both ways can be valid." That confession showed just how much Dolly had grown. She finally realized that her ever-cheerful way wasn't the cure for everyone's pain, and that not every storm needs a rainbow right away. What's fascinating is that despite everything, the tension, the distance, the totally opposite energies, these 2 legends never stopped respecting each other's craft. Winona has covered Dolly's songs in concert, pouring her own soul into those lyrics, while Dolly's always been the first to praise Winona's powerhouse voice. Their connection isn't about friendship or rivalry. It's something deeper, more complicated, like two reflections in the same mirror, each revealing a different truth about the other. As Dolly herself once said with her signature wisdom, "In this business, you don't have to be best friends to appreciate someone's gifts. Sometimes the people most like you are the hardest ones to get close to. You're both just seeing different reflections of yourselves." 5. Reba McEntire, the unspoken rivalry. For decades, country fans and journalists have danced around one burning question: who's the real queen of country music, Dolly Parton or Reba McEntire? It's a debate that split fans for years, with both women standing tall as icons of their generations. On the surface, they've always seemed like sisters in success, smiling on red carpets, trading compliments, and lifting each other up in interviews. But now, Dolly's finally admitting that the truth behind that picture-perfect friendship is a whole lot more complicated. "Reba and I have always had a special understanding," Dolly confessed in a surprisingly raw 2022 Nashville Insider interview. "We came up in different eras, but we faced the same battles. We've always respected each other's territory. We smiled on stage, but we knew the stakes." That one statement sent the entire country music world buzzing. For years, industry insiders had whispered about a quiet rivalry between these two legends, and Dolly had just confirmed what everyone suspected. There was competition, even if it was wrapped in Southern charm. Their careers were practically parallel. Two small-town girls who built empires from scratch. Both turned their one-of-a-kind voices into brands that stretched way beyond music. Movies, TV shows, business ventures, fashion lines, and even Vegas residencies. They weren't just singers, they were moguls in boots and rhinestones. But as one former CBS executive, Martin Reynolds, revealed, they were competing for the same opportunities without ever admitting it. There were only so many variety shows, Vegas slots, and product deals to go around. They were both pioneers, but the pie was only so big. And that quiet battle spilled into everything, from tour venues to award nominations to magazine covers. Dolly leaned into her image as the warm, witty country sweetheart with a sparkle in her eye, while Reba owned the spotlight as the polished, fiery redhead who brought sophistication to Nashville. Their differences made it easy for fans to love both, but behind the scenes, it was a different story. Longtime country promoter Jessica Williams spilled that, back in the day, both teams were keeping score. They tracked everything: who got the prime slot at the CMAs, who pulled in bigger crowds, who got more standing ovations. "They were too classy to ever make it public," Jessica said. "But trust me, the people around them knew there was a scoreboard. And yet, what makes this rivalry so fascinating is how gracefully they played the game. Neither woman ever slipped up in public. They performed together like true pros, handed each other trophies at award shows, and always spoke with glowing respect in interviews. Even when the competition was intense, they never let the world see the cracks. I admire how Reba built her career. Just like I hope she respects how I built mine," Dolly shared in her 2023 memoir. "We've been climbing the same mountain from different paths. Sometimes your biggest competitor becomes your greatest motivation." What a line. It perfectly sums up decades of silent competition and mutual respect between two powerhouse women who rewrote country music history. These days, the tension between them has mellowed. Both women have reached a level of legendary status where competition doesn't matter anymore. They're carved into country music's Mount Rushmore forever. They've even shared more stages lately, laughing about their parallel journeys and trading stories like old friends. But those smiles hide years of careful maneuvering. Every release date, every public appearance, every interview, it was all part of a subtle dance around each other's spotlight. Dolly swears they've never had a single crossword, and most insiders believe her. Their rivalry was way too refined for drama. Instead of catfights or public shade, it was all strategy. Timed album drops, career choices made with precision, and public images carefully crafted to never clash too directly. Country music historian Robert Ehrman once said it best: "Their rivalry might be the most elegantly managed competition in entertainment history." They flipped what could have been a media circus into a shining example of how powerful women can compete and respect each other at the same time. 4. Miley Cyrus, the goddaughter who tested her heart. Few relationships in Dolly's life mix the personal and professional as completely as her bond with Miley Cyrus. As godmother to Billy Ray Cyrus's daughter, Dolly's watched Miley grow from a bright-eyed child star into one of pop music's most talked-about figures. That journey hasn't always been easy to witness, especially for someone as protective and image-conscious as Dolly. "I love her like she's mine," Dolly has said many times, and she means it. But love doesn't erase worry, and Dolly has admitted the challenges of watching her goddaughter transform from Disney darling to bold, boundary-pushing superstar. During a 2021 Watch What Happens live appearance, Dolly dropped her usual filter and said, "I never judged her soul, just her choices." It was a rare moment where her polished diplomacy cracked, revealing the deep concern behind her smile. Their bond runs deeper than fame. Miley didn't just see Dolly as family, she saw her as a blueprint, a living example of how to mix country roots with global pop success. And for Dolly, seeing Miley's fearless energy reminded her of her own rebellious streak back in her younger days. But while Dolly's brand of rebellion was laced with wit and sparkle, Miley's came with shock value, provocative performances, edgy music videos, and a public persona that had the world talking nonstop. The tension hit its peak after Miley's Hannah Montana era, especially following that infamous 2013 VMA performance with Robin Thicke, the one that had everyone's jaws dropping. The wild stage antics, the provocative outfits, and her open talk about partying and drugs, all of it went against everything Dolly had spent decades steering clear of in her own career. For Dolly, who always balanced progressiveness with polish, it was tough to watch. In her 2023 memoir, Dolly admitted those years left her torn. "Watching Miley during those years was difficult," she wrote. "I understood her need to break free from that Disney image, but I worried she was doing damage that would be hard to undo. I called her reckless once, probably the harshest thing I've ever said about someone I love." That single word, reckless, carried a lot of weight coming from Dolly, who's known for finding the good in everyone. As Dolly watched Miley fight her way through the risky transformation from child star to full-grown artist, things got complicated fast. What made it even messier was that Dolly herself had once shaken things up using bold looks, teasing lyrics, and that playful, sexy charm that made her unforgettable. But Dolly's power was always in her instinct. She knew exactly where the line was and never crossed it too far. She could be daring without ever losing her audience's love. That's what worried her most about Miley's rebellion. Dolly was scared Miley was making enemies in the industry too soon, shared former Sony Nashville exec Patricia Thompson. Dolly built her career on never burning bridges. She worried Miley was torching them before she'd even walked across. That fear wasn't just about reputation, it was about survival in a business that never forgets. For a while, the strain between them was obvious. The two stopped showing up together as much, and their mentions of each other in interviews slowed down. It wasn't drama, it was distance, and that silence spoke volumes. But unlike so many Hollywood relationships that fall apart for good, theirs eventually found its way back to solid ground. As Miley matured and started reconnecting with her roots, something beautiful began to shift. She started showing more respect for the lessons Dolly had tried to teach her, and Dolly, in turn, began to accept that her goddaughter had to make her own path, even if it wasn't the one she would have chosen. Their emotional reunion came full circle at the 2019 Grammys, when they performed Jolene together, a moment that left both of them visibly teary. Fans could feel the love and forgiveness between them right there on stage. It wasn't just a duet, it was a healing moment, the sound of family finding peace again. Since then, Dolly and Miley have found a balance. They speak openly about their bond, but now with more honesty and depth. "We're more real with each other now," Dolly said in 2022. "She knows I'll always love her, but I won't always approve. And I know she has to live her truth, not mine. That's what real family is, loving through the hard parts, not just the easy ones." That evolution made their connection feel more real than ever, messy, emotional, and full of love that endures even through the storm. It's not just a showbiz relationship anymore. It's family in the truest sense, complete with the disagreements, heartbreaks, and reconciliations that only real love can survive. Number 3, Kenny Rogers, When Friendship Meets Business. For over 40 years, Dolly Parton and Kenny Rogers were one of country music's most iconic duos. From Islands in the Stream to Real Love, their voices blended so perfectly that fans couldn't get enough. On stage, they looked like a match made in musical heaven, laughing, flirting, and harmonizing like two souls completely in sync. But behind the glitter and smiles, even this golden partnership had its cracks. "We loved each other, but we also drove each other crazy," Dolly admitted in a 2022 tribute after Kenny's passing. "Kenny didn't always listen, and I don't like being bossed. But that friction sometimes made the spark that made the magic." That honest confession revealed what fans never saw, the push and pull behind the curtain that fueled some of their biggest hits. Their friendship was real and lasted until Kenny's death in 2020, but their working relationship was far from simple. They were two powerful personalities with totally different ways of doing business. Dolly's approach was all intuition and heart, while Kenny brought sharp business instincts and wasn't afraid to take charge. Sometimes that mix created creative tension, but it also created timeless music that still gives people chills. Their partnership showed how even when two stars clash, respect can keep the bond strong. Dolly and Kenny's chemistry wasn't perfect. It was electric, and maybe that's exactly why the world loved them so much. As Dolly watched Miley fight her way through the risky transformation from child star to full-grown artist, things got complicated fast. What made it even messier was that Dolly herself had once shaken things up using bold looks, teasing lyrics, and that playful, sexy charm that made her unforgettable. But Dolly's power was always in her instinct. She knew exactly where the line was and never crossed it too far. She could be daring without ever losing her audience's love. That's what worried her most about Miley's rebellion. Dolly was scared Miley was making enemies in the industry too soon, shared former Sony Nashville exec Patricia Thompson. Dolly built her career on never burning bridges. She worried Miley was torching them before she'd even walked across. That fear wasn't just about reputation. It was about survival in a business that never forgets. For a while, the strain between them was obvious. The two stopped showing up together as much, and their mentions of each other in interviews slowed down. It wasn't drama, it was distance, and that silence spoke volumes. But unlike so many Hollywood relationships that fall apart for good, theirs eventually found its way back to solid ground. As Miley matured and started reconnecting with her roots, something beautiful began to shift. She started showing more respect for the lessons Dolly had tried to teach her, and Dolly in turn began to accept that her goddaughter had to make her own path, even if it wasn't the one she would have chosen. Their emotional reunion came full circle at the 2019 Grammys when they performed Jolene together, a moment that left both of them visibly teary. Fans could feel the love and forgiveness between them right there on stage. It wasn't just a duet, it was a healing moment, the sound of family finding peace again. Since then, Dolly and Miley have found a balance. They speak openly about their bond, but now with more honesty and depth. "We're more real with each other now," Dolly said in 2022. "She knows I'll always love her, but I won't always approve, and I know she has to live her truth, not mine." That's what real family is, loving through the hard parts, not just the easy ones. That evolution made their connection feel more real than ever, messy, emotional, and full of love that endures even through the storm. It's not just a showbiz relationship anymore. It's family in the truest sense, complete with the disagreements, heartbreaks, and reconciliations that only real love can survive. Number 3, Kenny Rogers, when friendship meets business. For over 40 years, Dolly Parton and Kenny Rogers were one of country music's most iconic duos. From Islands in the Stream to Real Love, their voices blended so perfectly that fans couldn't get enough. On stage, they looked like a match made in musical heaven, laughing, flirting, and harmonizing like two souls completely in sync. But behind the glitter and smiles, even this golden partnership had its cracks. "We loved each other, but we also drove each other crazy," Dolly admitted in a 2022 tribute after Kenny's passing. "Kenny didn't always listen, and I don't like being bossed. But that friction sometimes made the spark that made the magic." That honest confession revealed what fans never saw, the push and pull behind the curtain that fueled some of their biggest hits. Their friendship was real and lasted until Kenny's death in 2020, but their working relationship was far from simple. They were two powerful personalities with totally different ways of doing business. Dolly's approach was all intuition and heart, while Kenny brought sharp business instincts and wasn't afraid to take charge. Sometimes that mix created creative tension, but it also created timeless music that still gives people chills. Their partnership showed how even when two stars clash, respect can keep the bond strong. Dolly and Kenny's chemistry wasn't perfect, it was electric. and maybe that's exactly why the world loved them so much. They were oil and water in some ways, said Grammy-winning producer David Foster, who worked closely with both legends. Kenny was methodical and precise, a total perfectionist who wanted every single detail mapped out. Dolly, though, she's pure instinct. She walks into a studio and just feels the music. That creative clash made their sessions unpredictable and sometimes explosive, but it's also what gave their duets that irresistible spark. Their different styles often caused fireworks in the studio. Kenny, with his background in jazz and pop, liked structure. He wanted everything timed, balanced, and planned to the second. Dolly, coming from her Appalachian roots, believed in raw emotion and following the heart of a song wherever it led. Studio musician Randy Scruggs remembered it vividly. Kenny would get frustrated because Dolly changed her phrasing on every take, and she'd roll her eyes when he wanted to plan out every note in advance. Both wanted control, just in completely different ways. And the tension didn't stop at the microphone. It spilled into business too. They were both sharp entrepreneurs, but with totally different mindsets. Kenny ran his career like a business meeting, steady, strategic, and calculated. Dolly, on the other hand, wasn't afraid to take risks, even if it meant ruffling feathers or confusing her fans. That difference came crashing to the surface during their 1984 tour, when fights over stage production, song choices, and even the merch table caused major backstage friction. Former tour director Michael Jenkins remembered those chaotic days well. There was a 2-week stretch where they barely spoke and had their managers talk for them. Kenny thought Dolly wasn't taking the business side seriously enough, and Dolly thought Kenny was playing it too safe. The irony? They were both right in their own ways. Kenny's discipline kept the show running like clockwork, while Dolly's spontaneity brought it to life. Still, even when their chemistry cooled on stage for a bit, fans could sense that the bond between them ran deep. They might bicker, they might pull back for a while, but they always found their rhythm again. Dolly summed it up perfectly in one of her later reflections. "We had a brother-sister thing going on. We'd fight, make up, forget why we were even mad, then do it all over again next month. But the love was always there." And that love is what made their partnership legendary. They didn't just make music together, they built a decades-long friendship that survived fame, ego, and time. They worked on countless projects beyond their duets, and every one of them carried that same mix of harmony and tension that made fans fall in love with them all over again. Kenny himself admitted it best not long before his passing. "Dolly and I disagreed about plenty, but we never disagreed about what mattered most, the music and the fans." That single line says it all. Their creative clashes didn't destroy them, they fueled them. Together, they proved that a little friction, when built on respect, can create magic that lasts forever. "Everything else was just noise we had to work through," Dolly once said about her work with Kenny. In the end, their occasional clashes might have been the very thing that kept their bond strong and their performances electric across 4 decades. It was proof that even the sweetest duets hide real human tension behind the curtain. 2. Linda Ronstadt, creative brilliance meets personal distance. The trio album, uniting Dolly Parton, Linda Ronstadt, and Emmylou Harris, is often hailed as one of country music's greatest collaborations. Their 1987 release, followed by a 1999 sequel, blended 3 distinct voices into pure harmony that felt almost magical. But behind that musical perfection, things weren't nearly as smooth between Dolly and Linda. "We made magic together, but we weren't friends," Dolly confessed in a blunt 2020 Variety interview. "Sometimes the most beautiful music comes from people who don't connect on other levels." Fans were stunned. For years, everyone imagined the 3 women as close sisters in song, but Dolly finally revealed the truth. Brilliance doesn't always equal bonding. In private, Dolly admitted to her biographer, "Linda had a coldness I never quite got past. She was a brilliant mind, an extraordinary musician, but there was always distance. I come from a world where warmth matters as much as talent. She operated differently." That contrast explained everything. Dolly, raised in the close-knit, emotional traditions of Appalachian culture, poured heart and soul into her art and relationships. Linda, trained with formal technique and deep musical intellect, kept sharper lines between her work and her personal world. They were opposites that somehow made magic when the mic was on, but not much beyond that. "They stood at different ends of the country music spectrum," explained historian Robert K. Orman. "Dolly was self-taught and instinctive, rooted in classic country storytelling. Linda was methodical, trained, and pulled from pop, rock, and folk influences. That creative divide sparked both brilliance and emotional distance. Recording the first trio album in 1987 brought their contrasts into sharp focus. All three women were huge stars, but they walked into the studio with totally different priorities. Dolly followed emotion, Linda followed structure, and Emmylou Harris often found herself caught in the middle, trying to bridge fire and ice while keeping the harmony alive. Linda's precision-driven style sometimes clashed hard with Dolly's heart-first instincts. Linda didn't appreciate her roots, Dolly reportedly told her bandmates during that time, frustrated by what she saw as Linda's overly intellectual distance from country's emotional core. The comment, never meant to go public, showed just how much Dolly valued raw feeling over technical polish. For her part, Linda never disrespected Dolly, quite the opposite. She openly praised her brilliance, once saying, "Dolly understands something fundamental about connecting with people that no music school can teach, but we just get to the heart of a song in different ways." Their paths were different, but both powerful in their own right. Their contrast didn't stop with music. It stretched into business and image, too. Both were groundbreaking women who controlled their careers, but their styles couldn't have been more opposite. Dolly leaned into her image, a mix of truth, glamour, and theater, turning herself into an unforgettable brand. Linda rejected that completely. She stayed straightforward, raw, and unfiltered, even when it cost her mainstream popularity. "I think Dolly sometimes found Linda's bluntness hard to handle," said producer Tony Brown, who worked with both stars. "Dolly moves through the world with charm and diplomacy. Linda says exactly what she thinks, no filter. Those two energies just don't blend naturally." Still, professionalism always won out. Despite their personal distance, both women managed to create recordings that changed country music forever. They proved that you don't have to be best friends to make something extraordinary. Their story shows that creative tension can build bridges just as strong as friendship. As Dolly later reflected, "I'll always value what we created together. I learned that you can harmonize perfectly with someone's voice without ever harmonizing with their spirit, and that's its own kind of music lesson." 1. Porter Wagoner, from mentor to adversary. No relationship in Dolly Parton's career was more life-changing or more complicated than her 7-year partnership with Porter Wagoner. What began as her big break on the Porter Wagoner Show turned into a volatile business entanglement that took years and a courtroom to finally untangle. Porter gave Dolly a platform that launched her into stardom, but as her fame grew, so did the tension. Their partnership would shape not only her music, but also her independence, marking the line between the star Porter helped create and the legend Dolly became on her own. The story of Dolly Parton and Porter Wagoner isn't just a career chapter, it's a masterclass in power, control, and transformation. Their journey from mentor and protege to adversaries reveals how Dolly evolved from a young talent trying to please into a woman determined to own her voice and her freedom. "He made me famous, then made me miserable," Dolly admitted in one of her most brutally honest reflections yet. "I'll always be grateful for the platform he gave me, but grateful doesn't mean I had to accept being controlled." When 21-year-old Dolly joined the Porter Wagoner Show in 1967, replacing longtime vocalist Norma Jean, she stepped into a world ruled entirely by Porter. He was already a Nashville star with a hit TV show. She was the bright newcomer with raw talent and big dreams. At first, it was a win-win. Porter gained a golden voice songwriter who could boost his show's appeal, and Dolly got national exposure that would have taken years to earn on her own. Their chemistry on stage was undeniable. Fans adored them together, but behind that polished partnership, cracks were forming fast. Porter was known for being controlling, especially in business. Dolly recalled in her memoir, "He wanted to control everything, my songs, my image, even my band. Early on, I needed his guidance, but later, it started to feel like a cage." As Dolly's confidence grew, so did the tension. Her solo hits, especially Jolene and I Will Always Love You, proved she wasn't just a duet partner. She was a force all her own. Those songs broke barriers, reaching far beyond the country charts and hinting at the global icon she'd become. But Porter couldn't handle watching his protege outgrow his shadow. "He couldn't accept that my wings were getting too big for the nest he built," Dolly reflected. "He blurred the lines between mentor, manager, and owner, something Dolly was no longer willing to accept. By 1974, she made the bold choice to leave the Porter Wagoner Show and go solo. What could have been a peaceful goodbye turned into a full-blown battle. Porter refused to release her from her contract and even demanded a piece of her publishing rights and catalog as repayment for launching her career. That's when Dolly turned heartbreak into history. She wrote, "I Will Always Love You." "I wrote it as a peace offering," she explained. "I wanted to say goodbye in the gentlest way I could. I played it for him, hoping it would soften his heart." Porter cried when he heard it, and then, shockingly, asked for the publishing rights. Dolly refused, standing firm for the first time in her career. That moment marked the true turning point, the day she stopped being someone's discovery and became her own woman. Porter Wagoner always believed he was the architect of Dolly Parton's success, someone entitled to lifelong credit and financial rewards from her career. Dolly, however, saw things differently. She respected his role in launching her career, but made it clear that her talent, her work, and her future belonged to her alone. Their professional split got so messy it eventually landed in court. To walk away completely, Dolly paid a huge settlement, buying back her own freedom, $1 at a time. Years later, she said it best. It was worth every penny. You can't put a price tag on owning yourself. That experience changed everything for her. After that hard lesson, Dolly became a trailblazer for artist independence. She built her own companies, held onto her publishing rights, and made sure no one would ever control her career again. What once started as a painful battle ended up shaping one of the most empowering chapters of her life. But perhaps the most beautiful twist came years later. When Porter grew old, sick, and broke, Dolly didn't turn her back. She reached out and helped him, proving once again that her heart is just as strong as her spirit. "I took care of Porter at the end of his life," she shared softly. "Not because I forgot the hard parts, but because I remembered the good ones. He gave me my start, even if he tried to hold me back later." Both parts are true. Their story captures everything that makes Dolly who she is, grateful yet firm, forgiving yet unbreakable. From being controlled to taking control, she showed the world what true strength looks like. Grace without submission, power without bitterness, and compassion that never fades. And that's a wrap on Dolly Parton's most dramatic relationships, filled with loyalty, rivalry, heartbreak, and redemption. If you love diving into the real stories behind country music's queen, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more wild music tales. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.